Good morning, dear students. Thank you for joining us, looking at the autonomic nervous system. This is the last part of the peripheral nerves. Autonomic nervous system is specific because it has only two portions or two divisions. We could say that the system consists of sympathetic, A, and parasympathetic part, division, or portion. The main thing is that they differ in many actions, but we will see step by step. Concerning the specific position of the autonomic nerves in the whole homeostasis of our body. Number one, they supply internal organs. They supply their walls and specifically the smooth muscles, not only of the organs, but also walls of the arteries and smooth muscles in the glands. And number two are quite involuntary. Finally, controlled by the brain. They regulate the internal environment. They are connected with the activities. So the activities are integrated with other nervous functions and also endocrine gland functions, secretions. The system has the means for physical expression of emotion. We will see how the autonomic nerves innervate the glands, sweat glands of the extremities, in the hands, in the palms, etc. But if we look at the general plan, it will be better on the next page. Excellent. So at the moment we see the general plan. That means we are comparing or we are looking at the principal components and then comparing the position of the nuclei and the position of the organ. So on the left side we see the central nervous system. It is either brain or spinal cord, depending where we are. If we are in brain, so this is the parasympathetic system. In the spinal cord, the sympathetic system. Then on the opposite side is the organ. Starting with the general construction. Concerning the parasympathetic system, we see and following neuron number one, which runs without interruption, usually to the ganglion, to the parasympathetic ganglion, where it ends, it's interrupted, and the short, very short postganglionic neuron number two innervates the organ, gland, etc. This is one system. Sympathetic seems to be more complicated. When we follow the sympathetic system, first of all, we see the typical fibers, the preganglion neuron number one, which is interrupted synapse at the level of the spinal of the sympathetic ganglia, as we see here. And then after interruption, the postganglionic fibers run. We see long neuron number two to the organ. That means that there is a principal difference between parasympathetic innervation with a very long preganglionic and very short postganglionic neurons, and the opposite situation is the sympathetic. And if we clear completely the first explanation, so we follow the second new type of the interconnection. The first neuron passes to the ganglion, which is situated in front of the vertebra. That means we call it prevertebral, while the previous one was paravertebral, as a pair situated on both sides of the vertebral column. So then after synapse, after interruption, it goes in the same way, either directly, usually together with the autonomic periarterial plexus to the organ. So when we look at it again, there is a principal difference in the length of the neurons of the parasympathetic and sympathetic system. And we will remember the name paravertebral ganglia and prevertebral ganglia for the following description. Next page, please. When we look at the next page, there is also difference in neurotransmitters, because they help in the synapsing. This is acetylcholine and noradrenaline. And acetylcholine typical for parasympathetic innervation. That's why the fibers are cholinergic, while the noradrenaline for sympathetic. That's why we call the fibers adrenergic. So we see two types of the fibers: adrenergic, sympathetic, cholinergic, parasympathetic. Concerning the fibers or neurons, as we say, neuron number one is preganglionic, number two is postganglionic. We use also again the interrupted lines. This is the same. Concerning difference between between sympathetic and parasympathetic in the location. So concerning the sympathetic system A, we call it thoracolumbar. So we see two parts, thoracic and lumbar system. Nuclei are in the thoracic and lumbar segments, while the parasympathetic system is called craniosacral. Again, two halves, cranial portion and sacral portion or system. So in the cranial portion, the nuclei are situated in the brainstem, and we remember we will name them again, the nuclei belonging to the nerves number 3, number 7, number 9, and number 10, while the sacral portion contains the nuclei in the segments S2, S3, and S4. So there are two different locations of both systems. When we look at the actions, on the next page, yes, so we will finish just the actions. Parasympathetic system prepares the body. We will keep in mind, prepares the body for an emergency. That means we need more blood in the heart, we need more blood in the brain, we need more blood in the muscles of the extremities. We need much less blood in the gastrointestinal system. The parasympathetic system reduces the heartbeat, decreases the blood pressure, activates secretory activities of the glands. So this is more or less logical. So the parasympathetic system is typically nutritive system, nourishing or supporting the nourishing processes in all the body. So when we look at the short review of the sympathetic division, concerning the sympathetic division, this consists of the ganglia. There are 3 cervical ganglia, superior, middle, inferior. We will see simplified drawing. Then 11 or 12 thoracic ganglia, then lumbar, 4 or 5, usually 4, sacral ganglia, and 1 impar. We speak about the ganglia, not nuclei. Nuclei are situated in the thoracic and lumbar portion of the spinal cord. So we have to distinguish between the nuclei. So this is seen in the following scheme. But before description, we are looking at these definitions that sympathetic fibers pass through the parasympathetic ganglia without interruption, belonging to the cranial nerves, which are attached to the cranial nerve number 5. 2. That means that they run together, and they run from the superior cervical ganglion. So if you look at the whole diagram again, on the left side, we see the spinal cord. Yes, we see the nuclei. These are nuclei situated in the thoracic and lumbar portion. Here, I have cut it to show a shorter diagram. If we can move a little bit up. Excellent. So, and then we have the whole diagram. So again, we are at the level of the spinal cord. We see the nuclei, thoracic and lumbar nuclei. So these are in segments. Then we see the chain of the sympathetic trunks on both sides of the vertebral column. And this chain consists of the paravertebral ganglia. Paravertebral. The other ganglia are called prevertebral. This is what I mentioned before the general description. So we see the paravertebral, paired, and unpaired or also paired prevertebral, but situated in front of the vertebral column. So if you look at the preganglionic fibers from nuclei, the preganglionic neurons run to the ganglia of the sympathetic trunk, as we said. Here we have superior cervical, middle cervical, inferior cervical ganglia, and then thoracic ganglia, as we said, and also lumbar, etc. And the superior cervical ganglion receives all the preganglionic fibers of the system, which passes through the ganglia attached to the nerve number 5. This is what we said several times. So we see now the postganglionic fibers that run to the organs via the parasympathetic ganglia of central nerves. This is logical. We know that this is nerve. These are nerves or the ganglia, which is ciliary, otic, pterygopalatine, and submandibular. Then the other fibers run to the cardiovascular system, to the tracheobronchial or the respiratory system, to the lungs, to the bronchi, etc. And then this also from the thoracic ganglia. And then we are looking at a specific course of the preganglionic fibers, which originate from the segments of the spinal cord. They run separately without interruption, are synapsed at the level of the prevertebral ganglion, which are, as we said, celiac, superior mesenteric, inferior mesenteric, and aortico-renal. So there are 4 ganglia which are paired, but celiac could be joined together, forming practically one complex of unpaired. Good. And these postganglionic second neurons run to the systems, gastrointestinal, stomach, liver, duodenum, etc., to the urogenital system. Here we have kidney, and also to the external genitalia. So to all the systems of the abdominal cavity. So we distinguish between the preganglionic fibers, which end at the level of the sympathetic ganglia. Postganglionic fibers neurons, they run directly to the organs. And the other way, the second one, are the preganglionic fibers, which originate from the segments, but they are synapsed at the level of the prevertebral ganglion, and then as the nerves run to all the organs, to the systems. The nuclei which are situated in the spinal cord are called intermediolateral nuclei. Intermediolateral, situated in the lateral horns of the spinal cord. So in the next lecture, we will start with the spinal cord, so that we will see again a repeat location of the nuclei. So this was the system number 1. That means the sympathetic system. We approach now to the parasympathetic system. On the next page, parasympathetic division is B, originates from 2 parts. Number 1 from the brainstem, and number 2 from the spinal cord in the sacral segments. So if you look at the first one, we said several times that there are nuclei in the brainstem. We remember from the high school that the term, this terminus technicus, brainstem, represents the oldest portion of the central nervous system of the brain, and it contains also the vital centers important for the life of the human beings. So that in the brainstem are also nuclei belonging to the parasympathetic system. Nucleus number 3, Edinger-Westphal nucleus. We follow the preganglionic fibers, the neuron number 1, which is synapsed in the ciliary ganglion, and then postganglionic fibers, or the neurons, end at the level of the ciliary muscle. We said it's important for the accommodation, for focusing on the nearby subjects, and also for the pupillar sphincter muscle, narrowing the pupil, depending on the amount of light falling on the retina. Then the second nucleus is the superior salivatory nucleus, belonging to the nerve number 7. It has 2 different ways. Number 1, passing into the pterygopalatine ganglion, from which the postganglionic fibers run to the lacrimal gland, but no, not only lacrimal gland. We remember that it innervates also the area, large area of the nasal mucosa, the paranasal sinuses, etc. And the second way, via the coda tympani into the submandibular ganglion, joining the nerve number 5/3, that means the lingual nerve, and the postganglionic fibers run to the glands, submandibular, sublingual, small glands of the tongue. So this was nerve number 7. The next nucleus is the inferior salivatory nucleus belonging to the nerve number 9, and via the tympanic plexus it passes, I mean the preganglionic fibers, to the otic ganglion situated close to the nerve number 5/3. The mandibular postganglionic fibers run directly to the parotid gland. So we remember the parotid gland is innervated by nerve number 9 from the inferior salivatory nucleus. And then approaching to last one, to nerve number 10, it has nucleus dorsalis, nervi vagi. We see the preganglionic fibers which run long, and then to the ganglia, arrow, which shows the ganglia situated in close proximity to the organs, and the postganglionic fibers innervate all the organs belonging to the cardiovascular, respiratory, gastrointestinal, urogenital system. So there are many branches, many ganglia situated within the organs or close to the organs. So this is the first part. Repeating and revising. In the rhomboid fossa of the brainstem, as we said, are situated nuclei Edinger-Westphal, number 3, superior salivatory nucleus, number 7, inferior, number 9, dorsal nucleus of vagus, number 10. The second part, belonging to the sacral portion of the spinal cord, has the nuclei situated, intermediolateral nuclei, in the segments S2, S3, S4. They pass via the pelvic ganglia. After synapsing, they run to the, as we said, to the descending part of the colon, and also to the rectum via the splanchnic nerves, to the rectum, to the urogenital system, to the gonads, to the external genitalia. So we know that the organs have dual innervation. External genitalia, of course, are innervated by the nerve number 10. But the complex, that means the parasympathetic system, comes via these two systems. We have to mention again that organs have dual innervation. Dual innervation means that the influence of both systems is balanced, well balanced, and we see that the dual innervation will be, with some exceptions, balanced, well balanced. We are looking now at the last page. When we compare some, or we see some complementary functions of the autonomic system. Starting on the left side, sympathetic, on the right side is parasympathetic division, and then at the center is organ, the area which is supplied. Starting with the pupilla. Pupil, size of the pupil of the eye. We need more light. We need better orientation. That's why the pupilla is under control, sympathetic, in the sense of dilation. While the parasympathetic system acts in the opposite, the constriction of pupilla. Concerning the blood pressure, good example. We said that the sympathetic system must prepare the body for the situation of an emergency. So that's why increases blood pressure, while the parasympathetic, in the quiet situation, acts in the opposite direction. Concerning the bronchi, again, in emergency, we need bronchodilation. We need more air into our system, for the brain, for the ventilation of lungs, etc. Parasympathetic acts in the opposite, constriction. Interesting is innervation of the heart and vessels. When we look at the heart rate, logically, the tachycardia results in the influence of the sympathetic system. So faster action, more blood. We need more blood for the organs. The opposite is parasympathetic, acting in the bradycardia. Concerning the peristaltic movements of the viscera, mainly the intestines. So in the emergency, we need much less blood in the organs of gastrointestinal system. So in logically also peristalsis is decreased. In the quiet situation, parasympathetic system acts in the opposite direction. Interesting again are the arteries. When we look at the arteries, here are written the arteries, or is written arteries of the gastrointestinal system. Yes, we need, as we said, less blood in emergency. So acting in the system or the complex of sympathetic in the means of vasoconstriction, while the parasympathetic permits better flow of the blood into the organs of the gastrointestinal system in the sense of the vasodilation. Concerning the arteries of the limbs, the same will be the arteries of the heart, the coronary arteries. In the emergency, we need more blood. So the vasodilation is more or less logical step, or positive vasoconstriction, the opposite action under control of the parasympathetic system. And then also we see the salivary glands, maybe a little bit up. Yes, one more. Okay, this is the end. We see the salivary glands. Definitely salivary glands belonging to the gastrointestinal system will receive less blood. So there is the act vasoconstriction, and it leads to the reduction of reproduction of the or secretion of the glands, while the parasympathetic system acts in the opposite, acceleration of the secretion, vasodilation. As I already mentioned, the coronary arteries, we need more blood for the heart wall, for the organ, for the heart. So then sympathetic acts in the sense of the vasodilation, and the parasympathetic system in the means of vasoconstriction. And as we said, we are at the end. Some organs, or better, the majority of organs have dual innervation. And we said that the action between balance or the influence of the autonomic system divided into the sympathetic and parasympathetic portion is well balanced. But some organs have only one type of innervation. And good example are the glands and vessels of the limbs, which are innervated only by sympathetic system, and glands of pancreas and stomach have only parasympathetic innervation. So we can summarize that we have seen just some examples of the action of the sympathetic and parasympathetic division of the autonomic nerves. Mainly, we could say, as the main rule, we could say that the organs are under control sympathetic, parasympathetic system in the well-balanced mode. But some organs have only one type of innervation. Autonomic nerves are very important, integral part of the peripheral nerves and also the whole nervous system. So we are at the end of the peripheral nerves. Concerning some recommendation for method of the study, the only way to start from the lecture notes, then go to the books, look just on the main things. You can put on the paper also the names of the main branches. Look at the target of the innervation of the action. So that means to look at the areas which are supplied by the nerves. Not all the names correspond with the areas supplied by the nerves. And then to try to revise the knowledge, look at the diagrams, and to try to compare it also with the course and the names of the vessels, because you see the organs receive the innervation. So it means that we have to know the names of the nerves, we have to know also names of the arteries, and we have to know also the names of the tributaries of venous portions. Plus, the lymphatic drainage. So I know that this is complicated. Thank you for your attention. I wishing you all the best in your studies of the peripheral nervous system. Thank you.